My dad, he named them. They came every year in the little pond behind his house. I made a nest.
So Barbara's visit will be starting in just a moment. Have a seat if you'd like.
Yeah. She said they came up on her carport and run around and they petted her plants and food on her driveway.
Okay, I was gonna do a program on soils. However, I got it all ready on Saturday and left it all there today, so luckily I had my posters in the car, so we're gonna do a plant chat, and I think everybody will enjoy that. But it's an interactive plant chat, so I want your feedback, I want your questions, I want your comments. If you're growing these in your yard, I'll go over some trees and some shrubs, pollinators, various plants that I have here. I think I have about 25 posters. I make these to educate the master gardeners so that they can educate the community. So every month I do a plant profile. Gail and I thought it up, and this is our outreach to the master gardeners so that they can be educated like we can and help support the Native Plant Society. So this is my all-time most favorite plant in the whole world, and it's called a fringe tree. The fringe tree is a beautiful tree when it blooms. However, it's a very, very slow grower. I have one that I've had in the ground since 1998, and it's about 10 feet tall. Blooms every year. I've got two that are about a little over two feet, and they've been in the ground for 2 years, and they're not growing very much at all. They're getting fuller, but they're not growing tall. So this is one of the slowest trees that you can get, but it's worth it when it blooms. Very little care. I don't do anything to it. I don't fertilize it. I only water it like we have a drought in the summertime. And of course I establish it when I get them, and I buy them all the time. But it's one of the, I think, the most beautiful blooms that you'll see out there. They're little dangling little white, like pom-pom flowers. It blooms, it goes deciduous in the winter, so it has no leaves. So it's not gonna be something you put in a specimen area that you want to have showy year round, because it does have that naked appearance during the wintertime when it has no leaves, but it blooms before it gets the leaves, and then the leaves follow shortly while it's in bloom. So so when it blooms, all you see is white. You don't see any green until the green starts to come in, and you'll see on this side here where it comes in. It also provides for wildlife. It gets little droop-like seeds on it that the birds and other rodents like squirrels and raccoons and all will feed on these. But mostly the birds and mostly the mockingbird. She loves every one of the trees in my yard that blooms. She tries to protect them at the same time, and they go into berry almost at the same time, so she drives herself nuts trying to keep all the other birds off of it. But like I said, this is one of my most favorite trees. Are they available for the plant sale?
I don't recall. I don't.
Okay, if it does, this is the botanical name. If it's listed that way, I don't know if it's listed by common name, but if y'all pass that around, you see multiple pictures, mostly of the bloom and how it looks in the landscape, and then the seeds are right in the middle on the bottom.
There's a shrub that gets that same kind of pom-pom type blossom. It's got
A shrub?
burgundy leaves.
Yeah, there's a
flowers.
loripedilum,
That,
has a white and a pink variety, or magenta color.
yes.
And
yes.
the white one is rare. If you have a white one, they don't really sell that because they want to sell one that's more showy, and that magenta color is real showy in the landscape. But if you get chili thrips, it'll wipe those plants out, so watch your bugs on that one. Nothing affects this, but it is, the only disadvantage I can give you is it's very, very slow growing. Does anyone grow one?
Yeah.
How's yours doing?
I'm here from Taylor County, which is large north.
Uh-huh.
I have 3 of them in my yard. They're absolutely gorgeous. I live here now, and I've been looking all over to try to find one.
Check with Anson's Nursery. That's where I got 2 of mine.
We have 3.
You have them?
I have them at home, I live there.
And they're very low care, right?
Yes.
I don't do anything to it, other than admire it when it blooms. So that's one of the best trees out there, but the slowest.
I'd say mine's probably done about 2 inches in the last 2 years.
Yeah, they don't grow much at all. Now, there's some more smaller trees, because the French tree is considered small. It's not like an oak or a maple or one of those other trees. These are 3 different native trees that I like, and they were unusual. You don't see them a lot. The red Buckeye, very, very pretty pink flowers. Has a unique leaf structure. It's an understory tree, so it doesn't want to take full sun, but it can take like 4 hours of morning or afternoon sun. So the Buckeye is a good one. It can get 6 to 35 feet. That doesn't make sense. Let's say 35 feet, but that's still considered a small tree. The pawpaw, does anyone have pawpaws in their yard? Did you bring them in or did you have them? If you live in the sand hills, chances are you have a pawpaw. They also bloom before the leaves appear on the shrub. And they have kind of a real light, buttery, yellow flower that kind of blows in the wind. So it's a lot of times they're called a flag pawpaw. They do get a fruit and it's finger-like, so it comes out and goes up kind of weird looking. I don't have the picture of the fruit. And it's very, very good to eat, but it only ripens a little at a time, so you can't go take the whole thing off. But the problem is the raccoon knows it too. Did I get all the way around? Did everybody see that? Okay. I have probably about 30 on my property. They do get tall. I have some that are like 12 foot tall, and they don't grow upright. They kind of grow all over the place. So they're not a real tight foliage plant, but the good thing is it is the larvae plant for the zebra swallowtail. That's the white one with the black stripes on it, and the pawpaw is. So you'll see these sort of in the summertime, late spring, you'll see where the leaves are pulled together and there's maybe some brown stuff in there. That's the chrysalis of the zebra. So you're going to see where they chew the leaves and because the caterpillars have to eat. So they will eat it. They won't ever kill it. And then the crabapple, 15 to 25 foot. Does anyone have a crabapple? I have 2 in pots since 2004, and they're still in the pots. So I can't move them, but I've cut the plastic where it's not going to hinder their growth and put dirt up around them. But I have 2 of them, and there is one down at the county. If you go down to the county garden behind the county extension, right in the back to the right of the main entrance to the garden, it'll be there, but you'll only see it and know it's a crabapple when it blooms. Very, very beautiful little. I've never seen an apple tree bloom, but this is supposed to be the shape of an apple tree, but they're very small. And it's all over the place. And it does bloom as the new leaves are coming. So these are 3 small trees.
What time do they bloom?
What's that?
What time of year do they bloom?
Spring. So, and then it's followed by a little fruit that's called crab apple, and the birds and other animals will feed on it, so that provides for wildlife too. It does have a modified stem, so when you're pruning it or whatnot, be a little careful, it can kind of poke you. So just prune carefully. And you're not going to prune it unless it has a broken branch or a dead branch. It's another one that you don't have to do anything to any one of those on that poster there. So those are really nice ones, but small.
I got a funny story. I have a woolly pawpaw.
Mm-hmm.
Last year I actually found some fruit that I could get because I wanted seeds.
You did?
And so I got them, I kind of put them in the house, and they started kind of smelling at that point, and I really didn't want to eat them all on seeds. And so they stunk really bad, so I put them on the front porch, and I come out the next morning and they're gone. But I'm looking down, and they're the perfectly cleaned up seeds for me are laying there in a little pile after something ate the fruit.
They didn't want to chew on the seeds.
No, and so I got them, and I just stuck them in some little tray, and out of the 6, I got 2.
Well, that's good.
And so they're about that big now.
I've never been able to get the fruit because I have too many possums, raccoons, and whatnot out there.
And then this year I got fruit from the slim leaf pawpaw. I got the slim leaves.
Right.
About yay big, have really beautiful flowers on them. And I got some seeds from those this year, so.
Now, the pawpaw is one of the ugliest plants during the summertime. It is not attractive. You wouldn't want to buy it if you saw it in the nursery, if you didn't know what it was and what it was going to bloom or what it looked like when it was going to bloom. Now, these are 3 native trees, and these are the first 3 trees you'll see in the spring, in order. The first one that you'll see is the Chickasaw plum. Again, it has a modified stem, so you can get stuck when you're pruning or trying to get the fruit because you can make a jelly from its fruit. It does have a fruit that comes later. It has white flowers, lots of white flowers in little clusters. One of the best attractors for the bees, especially early spring. You're going to start seeing these sometime in February. And Lord knows you might see them in January this year, because the last 2 years, plants have been really off their mark. So they've been blooming at odd times. And you'll see where the stem is modified right here. So it can kind of stick you. And it has these little apples. You can't eat them right off the tree. I tried.
Yeah.
Worse than eating a persimmon. So you want to definitely get them, boil them down if you're going to make the jelly or jam, or just you can make a tea with them. And you'll see how they come out on the tree, and they can get to the red stage if the animals don't get to them first. And they don't come out all at the same time. You'll see green, kind of yellowy green, then red, and then deep red. And then you can even see some that are even dark. They're very easy to propagate. As a matter of fact, if you have one that goes into bloom and seeds, you'll probably find babies all over the place a year later. You just dig them up and put them in a pot and bring them in from plant cell and relocate them on your property. Very easy to relocate. They are another one that is deciduous, so it's going to lose all its leaves. Then the next one you're going to see in bloom is the redbud. Now, at that same stage, you'll see the Walter's Viburnum will also be in bloom early, but these are trees. So the redbud comes into bloom, another deciduous tree. It has heart-shaped leaves. The flowers are up and down the stem, so they're not on the terminal growth like you'll see on the Chickasaw. So they're up and down all the branches, and you'll see them up the trunk and everywhere. Great plant for our migratory birds before they go back north, because it'll produce a little pod, like a pea pod, and they will open up and the birds will feed on them. And you'll see your northern warblers, the finch goes nuts over them, so she stays here year round. But our northern birds will definitely appreciate it if you put in a red bud. Nice pink colored flowers, which is unusual. Most of our native plants, trees bloom white. And then the dogwood. Now the dogwood tree is another one of deciduous, of course, blooms before and as the leaves develop in the spring, and it produces a really odd looking seed. It's like a star-like red fruit. You'll see it in the poster. And the squirrels and raccoons love these, and the woodpecker. That's one of his favorite fruit. And the little flower you'll see down there, they're 4-petal flowers. Blooms again white. And you'll see most white in the spring. You don't see many leaves, but the leaves start to come before the flowers fade off. So all 3 of these are deciduous, but these are the first 3 trees you'll see in the spring. Okay?
We have lost a lot of dogwood.
Dogwoods
in the
have,
Greenland area.
yeah, they can get a number of things. The biggest thing that gets mine is we have a little insect called a twig borer, and you'll go out to your tree, the red buds also, you'll see that a terminal stem will be dead, but the rest of the tree is fine. And if you look close, there's a little hole in the trunk where the adult, I think it's a beetle, that goes in there, lays the egg. When the egg hatches out, it eats the center out of the branch, which kills the water flow and the nutrient flow to the top of the branch, so that part dies. And all you gotta do is cut it back. If you wanna prevent it, go out in February and hit your plant with some garden dormant oil, like Organicide or something, and you might be able to prevent it, but it's hard to catch them because you don't see it. It's a little tiny beetle. Yes?
Are they actually native to Florida?
Yes, they are native to Florida.
I never seen any dogwoods.
Down here?
Yeah.
They were more, 20 years ago, you'd see a lot more, but with all the development and everything, changing our landscaping and taking everything out and putting new stuff in, they're not as readily seen. So if people have them, I actually bought, when I bought my property, I put 5 out. I have 3 left, and the best one was the one the guy with the bush hog ran over. It came back and just flourished. But the other ones, because I didn't know what I was doing, I planted them underneath the trees, and I had pine trees and oak trees and elm trees and sycamore tree. It was too shady, so I did lose the 2 that were in the deep shade, but I still have 3 left. But they're a little hard to get started. Is anyone familiar with growing them? Do you have trouble getting them started? I do.
I only have 1. and it's-
You only have 1?
It's moving along.
They're kind of a plant that needs a little 10 to 11 care to get started, but once it grows up, you can pretty much leave it alone. Okay?
I put one out about 4 years ago, and it's done really, really well, so, but it does have the brown stuff on the ends, and that's probably what's
Right.
happening. I saw it this summer, I was worried about it.
Okay, we're gonna go over a couple of shrubs now. What's my time looking like anyway? Doing good? Okay, most people don't even know that we have multiple, at least 2 native viburnum. Most people will know this one on this side here, the Walters viburnum, little clusters of white. When that blooms, the whole shrub is covered in white, but it still has its leaves, so it's evergreen. Now this one on this side is harder to find. I did find one, the arrowwood, fragrant and big old clusters of seeds for the wildlife. It's a lot of people confuse it with a hydrangea because from a distance it looks like a hydrangea with the way the flower is shaped. But I love that plant. I found it in Orlando, and when I got the opportunity to buy one here, it was actually at a plant sale. Where was it? The native plant sale a couple years ago that we did for the conference.
We have several.
You had some? Oh, cool. Anyway, that is a wonderful plant. If you get it, put it in a morning sun or a late afternoon sun. I wouldn't put it out in full sun. This one can go in full sun. But, so these are our 2 viburnums. Again, white. A lot of native plants are white. A lot of native wildflowers are yellow. Don't get that. This is one of my favorite shrubs, again, a white bloom. The oak leaf hydrangea. Oak leaf hydrangeas do really well to a point. They look great the first 2, 3, 4 years, and then they start to look straggly, and you go in and you try to prune. You can actually do more damage pruning, so just prune out the dead, don't try to shake the tree, the plant. It does have what's called exfoliating bark, so you'll see that the bark will peel. It's not dying. A lot of our shrubs do that. The sycamore does it, and the non-native, but the crepe myrtle does it. People come in all the time. What's going on with my bark? It's falling off. No, and all your pear trees will do that too. It's a smooth bark, and unlike our oaks or our pines or some of the other plants, they add to their bark, and their bark grows with it. The bark is so smooth that it doesn't grow. So when the tree grows, it splits the bark and it flakes it off so that there's a new layer of bark coming underneath the bark that's flaking off. So don't panic, it does that. The flowers are big and usually elongated. So it'll look like a hydrangea, like our normal hydrangeas you would get from the stores, but it'll be elongated in the middle. I guess the best picture for that is this one down here in the bottom. But afterwards, they use these a lot in flower arrangements because the flower stem or flower spray turns to a pinkish burgundy, and they'll use them in flower arrangements. And the leaves will turn their color in fall. So down here in the bottom, you'll see where the leaves got their kind of orangey red look. So it is one that's going to have fall color. Okay?
Like trees that do that,
Hmm?
like the trees that peel, should you peel it off?
No.
Or just leave it?
Just leave it go.
naturally?
Most people don't, a lot of people go out and peel it off, but you're actually harming the tree. Because if it's not ready to lose it, you're going to cause a wound and it has to heal. So just let it do it.
Like on the crepe myrtle, you get lichens on them.
Well, the lichens, I just hose them up, maybe spray oil one evening before you go out there with the hose. The next morning you can spray off, most of that'll come off. Or you can take a glove and when it's wet and just hold the branch and run your hand up and down and it'll come off. It's not gonna hurt it unless it gets real bad that the light can't get to the plant. And then one of our flowering shrubs that I really like is the native azalea. We have 2 native azaleas that do well here. This is the Florida, I call it Florida Flame, they call it Florida Azalea, and this is the Pinkster. And one has yellow flowers, very, very yellow. Again, a deciduous plant that has no leaves when it blooms. So all you see is yellow, or all you see is pink. Not a pretty shrub, but it's worth it for the bloom. And it'll bloom in spring.
And they smell good.
They do have a little bit of smell, not a heavy smell, but they do have somewhat of a smell. It is in the rhododendron family, so it's in the same family as our azaleas. But understory, don't put it out in full sun, but make sure it's getting 4 to 5 hours of morning sun or late afternoon sun. They can get, let's see, this one says it can get 3 to 10 feet, and this one 10 to 15 foot. So they can get some height to them. But in the winter, they're going to look really, really funny because they just have lanky branching, and it's not shaped like our normal that you normally see a shrub. But well worth it for the bloom.
Which one of these old leaves is native? Got several.
Which one?
Oak leaf, I think.
Those are all. That's just one shrub. It's just multiple pictures.
They all have different names.
There might be hybrids listed.
Yes, so which one is not the hybrid? Which one is native? So they won't have a name. Right.
Yeah, it'll be-
They would not have a name. Correct.
Okay, this is we have a native shrub called cassia, yellow flower. We got away from the white for a little bit. There's Senta and Bahama. Is that the 2 varieties?
Well, there's privet.
Bahama cassia and Senta mexicana, and then there's a variety of Chapman.
There's a Maryland, I believe, and there's also privet.
Well, the privet is the get the name of it.
Yeah.
Anyway, it is the only host plant in the cassia family for all of our yellow butterflies, all of our sophers, our dog-faced sulfur, our cloudy sulfur, our sleepy sulfur, our yellow sulfur. They're all use this plant to eat. Now, if they're going to be out there and they're going to eat leaves, he's going to look like a green caterpillar. But if it eats the flowers, he's going to turn yellow. So it depends on what he's eating. And this right here is the chrysalis that forms afterwards. Generally, you won't find that on the shrub because I know there's a lot of hungry caterpillars following them. So it'll be off the shrub. A lot of times they'll go under something like a fence or a post or a branch of a bigger tree. But these are delicate, so they can freeze in the winter. Mine has been coming back. I do try to protect them, so it's up to you. But anyway, this is our host plant for our sulfurs, and I think one of the prettiest flowering shrubs as far as a small shrub goes. Anyone grow those? I have like 5.
I have them, but they're not natives, I found out.
There is a non-native one that looks very much like this, so you have to look at the leaf structure, or buy them from a native
I
place.
took the picture and put it next to mine, and you really do have to look at it, but I came to the conclusion mine was not native.
Right. And then we have a number of native milkweeds. We have the sandhill milkweed, the pinewood milkweed, the swamp milkweed, and the aquatic milkweed. All of these are hosts for the monarch and the queen butterfly. The only drawback to them is in the fall, you have to cut them back to the ground because there's a disease that comes in and sets into this plant. And if they're not cut back, so they start out fresh from the ground in the spring, you can get that disease and it will cause the caterpillars and the butterflies to die an awful death or come out of a chrysalis and just they look like they're melting because of the disease. So if a chrysalis turns black before it's been there for a couple weeks, it's probably not gonna make it. So cut them back in the fall. And the Mexican milkweed, if you have them, go ahead and cut those back just to protect our monarchs and our queens.
Is now the time?
I would wait till like the beginning of November. So this one I have on my property because I live in a sand hill. It's out there normally. I don't grow them. I don't bring any in. I just let them do their number. I've never been able to get the seeds at the right time. I've tried, but you can't really find them. The shrub doesn't look like much of anything. A lot of times they'll put up one big shoot and then the flowers on the top. You can get them at Anson's. I know they've had them before. I don't know if they'll have them this Saturday when we're there. But it's a little harder to grow than the swamp milkweed. The swamp milkweed, before it blooms, looks just like the Mexican milkweed. Until it blooms, it has pink clusters. It can tolerate wet feet, but it doesn't have to have wet feet to live. They get tall, about 3 feet tall. And then there's the swamp one. That's a little shorty. He only gets about 18, doesn't even say, usually between 12 and 18 inches. It's a smaller little cluster of white flowers. It has little dainty leaves. Can actually sit in water, so it's a good bog plant. And then there's one, the pine woods milkweed, has a pink flower clustered, but it kind of lays out on the ground, and it has green leaves with pink veins. So they're a little harder to find. Usually you'll see them out there in a native habitat. Do not try to dig them up. It has like a 7-foot taproot, so you're just going to kill it. Let it stay where it's at and enjoy it there. But again, it is a host plant for some of our butterflies. How's my time? 5 minutes?
Those ones on the left, bottom left, is that the one that puts out like a balloon type seed pod?
No, that's a non-native.
No.
Oh, that's not.
They all have that kind of,
Yeah.
overlooking flower.
Yeah.
Are they all small?
most of them, the tallest one, the swamp one will go to like 3.5 to 4 feet.
Yeah, the one I had was pretty big. Yeah, and put out.
All right, then I'm gonna go over some of these wildflowers real quick since we only have 5 minutes. I did a series for the Master Gardeners and pollinators. So these are native plants that are pollinators, very, very showy. A lot of people think these are non-native plants because they are used a lot in the nurseries. But we got the Gaillardia, let me see. Black-eyed Susans, silverleaf asters, the climbing aster, the coneflower, and then the starry roslyn weed. Very, very good plants. The thing about these plants, most of them will we see, so be prepared for that if you're going to put it in. A lot of people make a little metal where they want they'll put a butterfly features there, or they'll put a bird bath where you can put stones in it so the butterflies can actually get water. Do not give them sugar water, just plain water in a low, shallow saucer or old bird bath with pebbles in it, and then fill it up. It'll also provide water for our bees and our wasps, because they need it too. So this is pollinator ones. I did 3 series of these because I couldn't decide which ones to use. So I went ahead and did 3. This is the skullcap, myatris, the mint, goldenrod, red sage, the spotted horse mint, the obedient plant, cardinal flower, and then there's the various colors of the, what is this one? Pensium? Yeah. I never can remember that one. I think there was controversy on this. I think the only one that's native is the white.
Oh, no, we've got like 4 different natives.
Do we? Okay. That's another series of pollinators. I like these because the flowers stay a long time, and it does provide for the bees. They're small. You can buy more of them because they're in a small pot when you get them. And then I use the verbane, the paintbrush, the Florida pennyroyal. I had put milkweed on here because it is a good pollinator. Wild sage, narrowleaf ironweed, the mist flower, and then the gerbera. So this gives you some purple flowers in there too. So these are all great great pollinators. So anyway, we didn't get to see all the posters. You can come up and look at them after the program or before the program starts if you want to. I kind of make these for the master gardeners, and they sort of just get put in my closet, so I thought it'd be a good idea to use them. Okay, any questions? I hope you learned something tonight. At least you got to see some of these flowers, what they look like when they bloom. So if you have them on your plant list, you'll know what you're looking forward to. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. We'll take a break for a few minutes. In case you came in late, you can go look at the bulletin board or anything. Take a little bathroom break, and then we'll definitely sign up. We have some sign-up sheets for our walks and for our volunteer events, and then we'll get started in a few minutes.
Yeah, I did it every month. These guys pay for the club pays for it, but it was our acquisition.
Oh, this is, I paid you more than Remember which? But they had you got them in the restaurant, so they got size earlier, so they're my size. So they're nice. But the small ones are different from all the birds. Yes, and also along with summer coat, in the water, and the there's a number.
Yes, and it's kind of like a scrub. It's like a mat. It has and then I have the scrub one that, it's up straight, and then I've got the cross.
Well, I only have
I love this.
I tell my kids, so it's express, I think I have
I made it the other day, it's 5 inches at this brand, and it makes this great brand for everybody. I get today.
Oh, no, I was on
Okay.
Yeah, and I just wasn't stopping because I
It's like a great, I took that and
Just a little flower.
this tall spreads out.
Hello and good evening. So I'm glad to see we have more people here this month than we did last month. Unfortunately, and our plant table was swamped last month because we're anticipating huge crowds, and this month it's not that many plants. But I'm glad everybody came, and we have everyone here to get together and spread the joy about native plants. So welcome to the Citrus Chapter hybrid meeting. If you can tell, we're doing recording with webcam and the audio. So we'll be broadcasting this for people who still want to stay at home, and that's going to be uploaded soon. As far as membership goes, Virginia, you said we have 135 members. Okay, and I believe we have some new members in attendance. We always give new members that the first time they're in free plant off the table. So would you raise your hands on who's a new member? All right. So do we have a new member packet, or were they already mailed out? They already mailed out. All right. So if you three would like to go up and pick a plant off the table before we do anything else, that would be great. You're welcome to have a plant. Do we have any new guests that have never been here before and need a ticket? Okay, so we give a ticket for the plant table to anybody who's here for the first time, so that you may participate. So we'll make sure to get you guys each ticket. Anyone else? No? Okay. So incidentally, I'm Athena Phillips. I'm the co-president of the Citrus chapter. My other co-president isn't able to be here tonight, but if you did a plant order, you'll be seeing her at the plant pickup because she's also our plant sale chairman. I also wanted to thank the people who did bring in plants for the plant table. That's one of our features of the meeting that I think really helps spread native plants through, and also sometimes gets plants that aren't as common that you may not be able to find in a nursery. So this is a great way to be able to share plants amongst the members. So October, if you don't know, is Native Plant Month in Florida. And the society celebrates this and honors it. We will be having the Board of County Commissioners proclaiming October Native Plant Month in Citrus County. So that's a big little event for Citrus County. We also have 2 field trips and 2 volunteer events. So if you didn't sign up, I do encourage you to sign up. The information about the field trips and everything is back there on the bulletin board. And you can also go to our website and find the activities for our chapter as well as the area chapters listed on the calendar. And if you're not already on the email list that once a month we send out the activities, make sure that you email us or call us or talk to us tonight and we'll get you on the email list. So speaking of volunteers, we are in desperate need of volunteers for our board of directors. And I'm very much hoping that someone that's watching tonight online or somebody in the room would be willing to come up and talk to us about what is entailed in becoming an officer. But the positions are president, secretary, treasurer, chapter representative, and the membership chair. And the terms are only for 1 year. So it's not a huge commitment of your time if you don't like it. But most of our board members have been on the board for 6 years already. So it's actually a great way to get to know the other active members and participate a little bit more in the conservation side and direct the chapter into whatever direction you think would be a good direction for the chapter to go. The details are listed in the bylaws that we have posted online, but of course we're here to answer any questions too. And then the plant sale, did we get any plant sale orders in tonight? We got a couple in. So thank you for the people who supported us through the plant sale. This is our fundraiser, and with the upheaval in the last year, it's kind of been a little wobbly for us, but we're glad to get the plant sale going again. And thank you to everybody who made orders. Tonight is the deadline, and the pickup is on the 15th, 3 to 6 p.m. at Nicholas Ford in Inverness. All right. So I guess we're keeping it as brief as possible on the business. I forgot to ask our new members, is there anything that you wanted to ask that you're particularly interested in? Maybe the reason why you joined that you want to find out about, and maybe we can help out? No? Okay, just passionate native plant lovers. Okay. All right, so we will start the plant drawing, and then we'll take a very small break, and we'll get started with the speaker tonight.
Did you mention the Anson program on the weekend?
Oh yeah, we posted a poster on the bulletin board, but I really want to encourage everybody to come to Anson's event this Saturday. We have 2 speakers from the chapter. Barbara's going to be one of them. Donna's going to be the other. They have a whole native plant section that you can shop in, and it'll be set up next to that. There's going to be free food. There's going to be some music. There's going to be prizes. They have been so generous with the prizes during Earth Day. I was just shocked. So definitely, if you want free stuff, go to Anson this weekend on Saturday. All right. Yes, sir. Anson is on Homosassa Trail in Homosassa. Their address is on the bulletin board as part of the flyer, or you can Google them. Yeah. All right. First ticket tonight is last 3 numbers 076. Nope. Step right up and go get your plant. Last 3 numbers 074. Oh, I think that was next. Let's get that dug up a little more. Last 3 049. Yes. Zero 51. That's what I was counting. 064. How many more plants do we have, Donna? 069. Do somebody else. Okay.
That was generous.
Thank you. 082. 054. Who was 054? Anybody? That was earlier. 054. Okay, you're good? All right. You're very generous tonight. Okay, 061. That might be 061. No? Oh, she's 061? Okay. I think that takes care of the last ones. Thank you. Actually, our business meeting went so fast we can probably get straight to the speaker. I don't think we need a break. Okay, so for Halloween fun, our presentation is Fairies, Trolls, and Dragons. Our speaker tonight is a friend of Citrus Chapter. She's visited us before and is coordinating the invasive plant removal that we're helping with in Brooksville. Lavon grew up in Orlando playing in the nearby lakes, springs, and wooded areas. She moved to rural Lake County 32 years ago to live on 5 acres of Florida scrub. She's a longtime member of the Florida Native Plant Society and was the Trout Lake Nature Center naturalist for 12 years. In retirement, she continues to work to make a difference for water, wildflowers, wildlife, and our great-grandchildren, too. So if you'd step right up, Lavon. This is Lavon Silvernell.
Yes, Athena is the main energy for the work on with Lakuchi Good Neighbor Trail. Have any of you ever bicycled on the Good Neighbor Trail? Yeah. Yeah. Can I spread germs if I kind of? Yeah. Because we had our plant sale this Saturday and I was a consultant, and by the end of the day I had no voice left. But we had 500 people there, and I don't think we know yet how much money it generated. And it wasn't just the money, it was getting people, because there were parents with young children, all demographics, all nationalities. It was really cool. There were organizations collecting petitions for some of the things that are happening in our county. It was an hour and a half drive for me to get over here. I'm probably you're almost a zone different than we are up here, because some of the things that you can grow, we're definitely at the southern limit of their range. So, and driving up here reminds me of what Lake County used to be. So I will encourage you to be involved as an advocate in your county so that you can control how it grows, not control, but influence how it grows, and become friends with the powers that be, perhaps even become one of the powers that be. I know you are all, we are all a little bit older, not all of us, but many of us, most of us. And you may feel that it's not going to directly impact you, but you have children and grandchildren, and even though they may not live here, it all makes a difference. So anyway, Athena, I can advance myself, right? Okay, so fairies, trolls, and dragons. How many of you still believe in fairies? Very good. How many of you have grandchildren who still believe in fairies? Yeah, it's a big thing, those fairy doors and telling kids that fairies are real. When I worked at Trout Lake Nature Center, there was a gentleman who came out and wanted to do a program for us on fairies. And I hesitated, but I said yes. Well, he really believed in fairies. It was part of his religion to believe in fairies. And I kind of found it annoying because I felt it distracted from the real magic of the natural world, the real fairies. So let me see how I get this way. Okay, so you're blessed that you still live in a county that has large natural areas, rural lands, and habitat may not seem as urgent to you, but it's not necessarily about providing habitat for the wildlife as much as enjoyment for ourselves and helping other people to understand the impact that we have. Because even though you may have enough space for habitat for wildlife, you still have springs and waterways that the actions that you take in your yard are impacting that watershed. So in order to preserve the magical creatures that create diversity in our landscape, it's the basic needs. I worked at Trout Lake, food, water, shelter, and a place to raise their young. Tidiness is not a virtue from wildlife's point of view. Avoid removing any piece of habitat all at once. And the story that I tell is we had a little swatch of plants in the middle of the parking area at the nature center. And we knew there was a little mouse living there because it would very kindly peep out often when the children were there, much to their delight. Well, we decided that we needed to tidy things up and weed things up, and we removed a lot of shelter for that little mouse. Fortunately, after the children left that day, this occurred, but there was a hawk. He stuck his head out and didn't have the shelter that he'd had before, so he was part of the food chain, which isn't the end of the world for one little mouse to lose his life. But it is, if you have limited habitat and you were enjoying that little mouse, you would have been rather sad. So don't clean up everything all at once. And then manage for habitat diversity, whether you have a 1/4 acre lot or 1,000 acres to take care of. You want to have a variety of kinds of, and I'm going to be talking about that as I go along. Okay, so if you've heard me talk before, you may have heard me talk about this little fairy that happens to be one of my favorites. There is a fairy hidden in this picture, and when I say a fairy, of course, I am talking about a living creature, not the, thank you, not the imaginary kind, unless of course you believe in fairies, in which case you do. I don't want to burst your bubble, but because maybe they really are out there. So do you see the fairy in the picture? Here, take this. Do you know how to use this? Point with the red button. It is the little laser pointer. No. Anybody else want to try? All right, I'm going to move to the next slide. Okay, can you see it now? See it right. Not this. This is what you're seeing. This is a Perula beetle, but the beetle is right here. See the legs? Oops, the legs and the antenna. Let me go back again. Now, can you see them? Yeah. But they're perfectly camouflaged in their plant. What is her name? The lady who Barbara was talking about borers, twig ants, or other kinds of borers. The Perula beetles are native species. Perula trees, the Roxylon tenax is what they're called now, are native species, and they're very thorny. Do you know? Yeah. Landowners are not necessarily, and fencing guys really hate them. But lost my train of thought with that. So the beetle blends in perfectly, as you can see on this one. You can see how the leaves are shining green on top and that rusty reddish brown underneath, and the beetle blends in perfectly on that tree. But because they're balanced, when he bores, because they're both native, because the tree and the beetle are both native, when he bores into the tree, he slows its growth and eventually may kill it, but he doesn't devastate the whole population as what's the emerald ash borer that's not a native and is decimating the ash population. So, okay, Florida friendly is a great idea, but unfortunately, Florida friendly is not always friendly enough. And it's a step in the right direction, but this landscape is probably using less water, maybe less fertilizer, but it's not providing much habitat. So this is one of our members' landscape. She's unfortunately left us for British Columbia now, but she added these native plants. She had all the typical lawn down to their stormwater pond, and she's added native plants and a bird bath and So she's using far less water, certainly after her plants were established. And she has things that will be attractive to wildlife and useful to wildlife. And should be using no fertilizer, depending. So these are some of the things that will use a landscape like that. Can you see the spider in that picture on your, I have to stop and think, right? Yep, it's up at the top. It's a Greenland spider. There he is right there. Actually, that's a she. I've been looking. Have you seen no Greenland spiders yet this year? Yeah. I don't know what's going on, and maybe they're just going to be later this year, but typically by this time of year, they have a little white cluster that's their egg sac. And once they have their egg sac and some webbing around it, they're pretty easy to spot. Once you develop an eye, I told the kids that animals develop a prey image for what they eat. It kind of, pops out in your mind. I'm trying to think of an example that would work for, well, how about your children in a crowd? They're going to just stand out in your mind. But so Greenland spiders were one of my favorites. I would take them out for outreach when I worked at Trout Lake. I would cut off the stem that the little egg case was on because that mama spider will not leave her babies. She must go out and forage, though she has her nest usually close to a flower and a plant that has flowers. So the insects come to her because they're attracted to the flowers. But when I would cut her stem off with her baby, she would stay right there with it. I would put her in a bug box, and I would have loved to have brought one with me today, but I couldn't find any. But in this particular case, she had caught that. And what kind of butterfly is that? It's a swallowtail, but is it? It's a Palamedes. See the yellow line right there? That's a Palamedes. So unfortunately, it was attracted to the flowers, and she had her food, but it was one of my friends. So, I didn't really want to take sides. So what I did was cut her nest off and moved it to a plant that wasn't quite so attractive to butterflies. And that was because that's what I would do when I would take them out for outreach. I would bring them back and I would put them on, because often by the time they have and their little spiderlings stay with the egg sac, because often when I take them out, the little spiderlings had hatched, but they too stay right there with the home. One time I had taken them out to a high school class, and we talked about a variety of things. The bell rang, they jumped up to leave the room, accidentally knocked the bug box off the desk, and so there were little baby spiderlings all over the floor. And it's a picture I'll never forget, because they had sheets of notebook paper down. They were frantically trying to scrape the little spiders on the notebook paper and put them back in the box. And I bet many of them still remember that too. So, and then these are some other flowers on the other side that would attract. That would be, yeah, I think I just threw those in there for space, but they're good pollinators and good spider plants, because they're going to attract the pollinators that the spiders can eat. And then I was listening to the radio today as I was driving, and they were talking about caring for your palm trees and how you should not trim the brown fronds off your palms, because you want the green ones off. Only trim the brown ones off. The green ones are still pollinating. They're still feeding your palm trees, so you don't want to trim the brown ones off. Well, I go even further than that. I tried to convince a group of men from the villages that those brown fronds were the palm trees' tutus. You know what a tutu is, right? And that they should be left there and viewed as attractive. Because beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Think of the things that we used to think were unattractive. My hair, for example, is sticking out all over the place. It would have not been a style that was acceptable in the past. Things would have been sprayed down and well behaved. But fashions can change, and we could come to think of brown tutus on palm trees as beautiful, because they are great for wildlife. Many things will shelter in the boots and those brown palm, I don't know if there's a name for those or not. Fronds, well, right, other than dead fronds. The seeds, the landscapers often trim the seeds off the palms. Cedar waxwings love those seeds when they come through in the spring, and they'll strip them off. So if you're too neat and tidy, and then I have this stinking cockroach down here, and I should have brought it. How many of you have ever experienced a stinking cockroach? Stinking cockroaches really stink. They don't want to come in your house. They're really an outdoor cockroach. Every now and then one will stray into my house, and if I'm in a good mood, I pick him up with a paper towel so that he can't spray me and toss him back outside. If I'm in a bad mood, I pick him up with a paper towel and flush him down the toilet. Well, I figure there's a chance once he hits the septic tank that he can swim to the top and find a crack and escape. So I'm giving him a swimming chance. So it is for bats, for many birds will nest. Well, here, let me show you the next slide. This is a little screech owl. You can see those palm fronds. He's in and I had, anything that's native, there's probably something else that's native out there that will utilize it in some way. That may not always be true, but I suspected that something must use those little stinking cockroaches for food. And I found a number of references. I went to an Audubon program, and the speaker said that screech owls would eat them. And then I found this picture and said, yes, something for real really does. And I suspect that other things will as well. I suspect rats of eating roaches because I have both in my barn, and I have found what looks like the remains of roaches that rats have eaten. So yes. Well, when they're small enough, but most lizards can't handle. So the full-size stinking cockroach is pretty big. Yeah. So, and then Perula Warblers. How many of you know what this little fairy looks like? Yeah, if you can't spot them because it's not easy to spot them, they have a call that's an ascending trill. And sometimes I try to play calls, but I have so much difficulty handling the technology so that I haven't brought that call with me, though it might be on my phone, which my battery's almost dead, so I can't even try. Okay, so, but one of the cool things about being a naturalist is there's always something, there's always something to excite you. And one of the thrills a few months back was I had gone we were getting ready for a firefly hike with Florida Trail, and we were waiting for people to gather, and there was a tree. I can't remember what kind it was, but it had Spanish moss hanging from it. And there was a little Perula Warbler up there hopping around and I was watching him while I was waiting because that's what naturalists do. And all of a sudden I noticed he had gone over to the Spanish moss. He kind of poked around on the Spanish moss, and then he dipped inside because Perula Warblers build their nest inside the dangling Spanish moss. It's like a little hammock in the Spanish moss. Once when we were at Trout Lake, one of the kids picked up a piece of Spanish moss or a clump of Spanish moss off the ground, and we were lucky enough that it had not anything in it still, but the little cavity that the Perula Warbler had made. Bats will use it. They say in the olden days when they used to collect it for what they called horsehair, they'd strip the outer material would rot off, and they'd use that inner fiber. In fact, have you ever? There was a woman who came to an event once, and she was still spinning things like pot holders and saddle pads, horse blanket saddle pads out of horsehair, or not horsehair, but the Spanish moss. When I work with adults, I like to show them. Adults often think that the Spanish moss is killing their trees. Barbara mentioned that the moss itself doesn't kill your trees. If it gets too thick, it can shade out your tree, but the fact that it's getting so thick is often an indication that the tree already has a problem and is losing leaves so the light can get through and make the spot moss spread. So, and what I would do when adults would swear that it was killing their tree is lick my finger, roll the moss around in my finger, because if you do that, the Spanish moss is green. It's a photosynthesizing plant. It's not stealing food from it's not a parasite. Okay, so lizards. I brought one of my Florida's Fabulous books along. Do any of you own this set of books? Yeah, you can order them online. You can order them used. You can order them used. There's a whole set of them. There's butterflies. There's mammals. Yes, you can find it all online and more. But and if you have grandchildren, I've taken these out for events for children, and they'll grab them up like potato chips. Of course, there wasn't that much else for them to do at that time, so maybe they were desperate. But they have great pictures. In fact, I won't be able to find it. There's one in here of an alligator. Maybe I'll get really lucky. Oh, well, I'm not going to take time, but there's one of an alligator under a rookery of birds waiting for, it looks like he's waiting for a bird. Well, I'm sure he wouldn't mind if a little fledgling dropped down where he could get it. But they also help to protect that rookery by keeping predators from raccoons from coming in and attacking the nest. So even though there might be some sad loss, there's still a gain for that rookery, which that's off the subject. Okay, so can anybody name this lizard? Very good. And well, I have 2 cats, so they would not survive very long in my house. But I live on 5 acres of scrub. It is, when I first moved out there, we still had scrub jays. We no longer have scrub jays, and we are losing diversity. And I am part of the problem because I can't manage my scrub. I can't burn it. I have a wood frame house in the middle of it. Mike Jenkins did offer, if I'd count my pygmy fringe trees, I have pygmy fringe trees, the rare and endangered one, that there might be some funding that I could get to help to manage my scrub. He was at the festival. So I have these geckos now. I never had them before. I only had green animals and lots of other fence lizards, skinks, other 5-line race runners, but not Mediterranean geckos. This is the first year I've seen those around my house. It's also the first year I've seen Cuban tree frogs around my house, which I caught one of them and he went in the freezer and hopefully just got drowsy and went to sleep and will never wake up. All right. Okay, so what is this one? Right. Have you ever, there's a book called Those Florida Yard Lizards. If you ever get that, you have to Google for it. It is a very entertaining book. This gentleman wrote it. I had him come and speak when I was at Trout Lake. And it was a dialogue between this individual who'd broken his leg and was stuck in a recliner, and Anne and Noel, one was a Cuban anole and the other one was a green anole. And they told him all kinds of interesting things about anole life. It was very factual. It was very entertaining to read. When I did the program, I had a friend, Bernie Yokel, if any of you have been with Audubon for a long time, who said, why would you do a program on anoles? They're so common. And I said, well, that's exactly why. People don't know that they have 2 private parts, the males, that is. Yes. Those Florida Yard Lizards. And that's the name of the book, Those Florida Yard Lizards. And Stephen or Steve Isham, Isham, I think was the author's name. It's amazing that I might have remembered that. Well, that's my second. And then, what this one is down here. Yeah. And I had to quit calling them Cubans when I worked at Trout Lake because I could tell that I would hurt some children's feelings, because I would say they were invasive exotics and they didn't belong here and they were Cuban anoles, and I could just read on their faces. So I just call them brown anoles now. And then this one, does anybody know what this one is? Fence lizard, very good. And the males have an iridescent blue panel on the sides of their bodies. We had those not on my property. I never saw them on my property, but the property next door to mine. My kids camped over there when we were first moving into the house, and they saw them and took one home and put it in a terrarium, and it disappeared until the next spring. It was burrowing in the sand, sheltering, hibernating over the winter. So these are just some of the lizards that you could have on your property, and they're the dragons, yes. And there's one that had its tail, a really big guy that was on the stairs this summer, and he got his tail ripped off, and it's growing back out. And so, I can identify him now. And so he's kind of a friend, even though he's a brown. I did not have browns until I started working at Greenland Gardens. I had a part-time job when I retired. I was taking a flower pot out of the car, and a brown animal jumped out on the ground, and I didn't even think about it. I stepped on him like he was a roach. Unfortunately, I did not want them on my property because I only had greens at that time. Well, greens and other green animals. So I do take sides. Okay, this is supposed to be the mouse that is used as in movies and commercials because it's the cutest mouse. It's a little golden mouse. I was researching something and I ran across an article, a scientific study about golden mice. And it talked about they're arboreal or on the ground, close to the ground. They live communally. They build these little shelters. You're nodding your head. Do you know about them? Do you have any experience with them? No. I unfortunately know that I have them on my property because I had a cat that was an inside-outside cat. She would not use the litter pan, and she would spray in the house. So she did not stay in the house, but I could not bring myself to have her put down, and I couldn't fairly give her to someone else and just give my problem to someone else. So she was an inside-outside cat. She is no longer. She probably met the inside-outside cats meet because we definitely have coyotes in my neighborhood. But the way I know that I have little golden mice on the property is one day she was running through the yard and I saw 4 little legs sticking out of her mouth. I grabbed her by the nape of the neck and she opened her mouth and a little golden mouse ran away into the woods, still appearing to be healthy and intact. So there must be more out there. And this little guy, does anyone know what that is? It's a short-tailed shrew. We had them at Trout Lake. We found that out because a child accidentally stepped on one during the herd of kids going through for a field trip. And we found it after the field trip was over. But I must have a huge population of short-tailed shrews at my house because the cat would bring me a short-tailed shrew and leave it on the doorstep in the morning. Quite often, they are venomous. Their bite can cause a serious infection. Can't kill an adult, but it would be painful because it is toxic. They are fierce little carnivores. They're supposed to kill anything that's their size or smaller, and will fight with each other as well. Do they make? I can see that. But these guys are down in the leaf litter. I have a series of tunnels that go through my yard that have literally been there for 30 years. That same spot in my yard has a raised tunnel going through, and I don't know what lives there. It may well be used by multiple species because it's been there and preserved for so long, but I would love to know what lives in there. It's a troll tunnel. There you go. Well, and see the short-tailed shrew could be the troll that's living in there, along with moles. Yeah, anyway. Okay. And what do moles eat? Speaking of moles, do you know what moles eat? Bugs, insects. They are strict carnivores, insectivores. They do not eat your plant's roots. They're actually protecting your plants from the insects that do eat the roots. Okay, this is another story. This is an example of food chain. All right, whoops, ding. Good thing I didn't cuss. It was an accident. I'm pushing the wrong button. Okay, let me try. This is a hackberry, also called a sugarberry, and because I am a naturalist and I like to try things, I did try one of the berries one time, and they have like a little crust of sugar on the outside. They're very popular with birds. I like hackberry trees. I think they would make a great landscape plant. People will come in and say, I want a tree that will grow fast. Well, hackberry's your tree. It will grow fast. It has lots of habitat value. There's a hackberry butterfly that uses it. So, and birds like the seeds. This little, let's see if I can get the right one. Okay, Barbara, what's the little fuzzy stuff? It's highly magnified. Aphids. Those are they're highly magnified, but they're little. Yep, they are. I was at Emeralda Marsh, a beautiful natural area in Lake County, and I met a group that had already been out on the trail I was traveling, and they said, you've got to go out there, you've got to see this. So when I went out, there were swallowtail kites flying. There must have been a flock of 30 swallowtail kites. And being a curious kind of person, I'm going, okay, why are these swallowtail kites congregated here? Because they were moving around. And I started watching, and what I saw was these little, what looked like little snowflakes, or teeny tiny little snowflakes floating off of the hackberry tree. And then I noticed that there were some very large species of dragonflies snapping up these little snowflakes, and the swallowtail kites were snapping up the dragonflies. Swallowtail kites eat while they're on the wing. They were catching them with their feet, and then they bend over and eat while they're on the wing. I had my binoculars with me so I could see. So that was one of those really, exciting fairy sightings that naturalists enjoy. Okay, what do you think that purple splotch is? Very good. Okay, this is my segue to how many of you have beauty berries? Beauty berries. Did you ever squish a beauty berry and look at the inside of it? Nobody ever squished their beauty berries? You never made beauty berry jelly? Nope, it's white. It's white. So beauty berries, I have a bumper crop of beauty berries this year. I have spikes of beauty berries that are this long in my yard. I've been trying to get the grapevine under control, and it was growing over the beauty berries. So there has been some beauty berry by-kill, but I have lots of beauty berries, which is a good thing because many birds. I just sighted my first catbirds. Do you guys have you heard your catbirds? You probably got them. Not yet. Well, I had three show up in my yard because they probably know from years past that I have beauty berries and winged sumacs, and I don't think I have winged sumacs in this program, but I think winged sumacs are. I don't know why they're not more utilized as a landscape plant. They make a small tree. They have white flowers in the midsummer. They make a cluster of, let's see, what color are those berries? Burgundy, right? Yes, burgundy. And you can make Indian lemonade with the berries. You can pour hot, not boiling water over the berries. That red covering is malic acid. Well, I guess it's not just the malic acid that makes it red, but anyway, there is malic acid on there. I did this with some adults recently. I do it with kids. I have them roll one berry in their fingers and then lick their fingers and ask them how it tastes. And it tastes sour. I say it tastes like sweet tarts, but without the sweet. And you can use that malic acid that you've now collected by pouring hot, not boiling water over it to make Indian lemonade, or probably other things if you were so inclined. It's winged sumac, not poison. You guys would have to be a little bit more careful. The winged sumac and poison sumac don't look anything alike. I made the acquaintance of winged sumac, or not, excuse me, the poisonous, toxic, irritating sumac, and I can't remember what it's called. Do you remember? Anyway, it looks entirely different. Doesn't have a compound leaf. It has a simple leaf, but we found this plant at a wetland area. We were trying to ID it. I put a piece on my clipboard and carried it around. And when I got home, Barbara Grigg, our naturalist, sent me a called me up and said, I figured out what that plant was. And I said, yeah, I know already, because I had a rash. But winged sumac is not an irritant. It is not toxic. It's a pretty little tree. It has fall color, especially up here where you guys are. You'd have fall color. And the birds adore the berries, and they love them best in the spring when the berries are dried up and black and ugly. But that is their starvation food for just before they migrate. Many of the seed-eating birds will utilize them before they migrate. So that's another, which I don't think I have that in here. But I have beauty berries, and I have catbirds, which to me don't sound like cats. They sound like angry squirrels. Oh, I do have winged sumac in here. Those are the berries of the winged sumac. You can see how shiny they are. They have little hairs that the malic acid is collected in. That was a catbird. They make a mewing. It is kind of a mewing sound or an angry squirrel sound. They're quite vocal. They're sulky birds. Another one of their needs is heavy cover. They have to have a place to hide, to shelter. They're mimids. They're related to mockingbirds. A mockingbird's call is 3 repeated sounds. Catbirds do 2 repeated sounds, and I can't say I've ever really noticed them doing that. Maybe they only do it up north where they nest, but they are still fun to have around. I'm always excited to see them I'm excited to see all. I have more chickadees this year than I've ever had. I think because my property has become more woody and less open, which isn't necessarily good, but it gives me another species to enjoy. Okay, I used to have open sand because I was scrub. I still have a little bit, but not much. It's something I'm going to work on, hopefully. But if you have like an old carport or an old lean-to shelter that has sand, or under the eaves of your house where there's sand, and you get do you know what these are? Let's see if I can get the right one. Antlions. Do you know what these are? That little squiggle right there. It is antlions. I was hoping it was sand skinks. I thought for a long time, because I do have sand skinks. I've seen sand skinks. I've been working in the yard and dug up sand skinks. I had a poor sand skink that made the mistake of coming in the house. So I do have. So anyway, I decided that I was tired of trying to wade around in this sandy area, because that's where we have our barbecue grill and that's where I do my plant potting. So I decided I wanted to put a more human-friendly surface down. But what I did to compensate for taking away that habitat in my yard is leave wide spaces between the pavers. So now I still have spaces for the antlions and the wasps that burrow, and maybe some mole skinks. You never know. But did you know what an adult antlion looks like? Yep. That's not really what they look like, because that's one that's dead and has had its wings spread. But they look a lot like a dragonfly. I used to see them on my sliding glass doors at night. Unfortunately, that's something else I haven't seen for quite a while, and it makes me very sad. I literally have no insects coming to my sliding glass doors at night, and that is a scary thing. Cuban tree, well, I don't really think I have that many Cuban tree frogs. I don't see any evidence of them. I just think they spray in my neighborhood, and they have new sprayers that can cover a city block at one time. So, and I did ask them not to spray in front of my house, but I'm in the woods. I doubt they really turn their sprayer off when they go past my property. But I do still have a lot of things that eat insects. I have Chuck Swill's widows, which I don't have in this PowerPoint. Raise your hand if you have Chuck Swill's widows in your yard. People think they're whippoorwills. You guys might. I don't think whippoorwills. Well, whippoorwills, I know in my area, it's really the Chuck Swill's widow. The whippoorwills are a more northern bird. And what you hear, because there was a lady called the Eagle Lady. She camped out in an eagle's nest way back when. I had her come to the child care center that I was directing, and I said something about I had whippoorwills in my yard, and she said, "Those are not whippoorwills. Those are Chuck Swill's widows." Okay, but still very. Yes, you can. If you've never done that, you don't have to be a child to enjoy doing it. You could take a little piece of grass and you can tickle. This is called the Angle of Repose. It's one of those things that I remember from science class, that this angle it's perfect so that so if it's disturbed at all, the little grains of sand go rolling down in there, and the little insect is trying to get out, and the grains of sand are rolling, and he can't get out. And the antlion see over here, did you notice the antlion over there? They have really big pincers, and they reach up there and grab the little insect, ant, whatever it is, and they pull it down and they crunch him up. Then you can mimic that beginning of that process by taking a little piece of grass and kind of tickling those grains of sand and starting them rolling, and he'll stick his little pinchers up and try to grab. When I directed the child care center, that was one of the kids' favorite things to do. It's been a child's favorite thing to do since we were kids, and they would catch the antlions and put them in some of the sand toys and carry them around and play with them and torment them. But you know what? It connected them to nature. Yes, doodlebugs. Doodlebug. How did it go? Doodlebug. There was a little. My mom had a little rhyme for doodlebugs. I don't remember what it was. Maybe it'll come to me in the middle of the night. Okay, cicada killers. I can't say that I've ever seen one of these with a cicada or cicada, whichever one you want to call it, but they're in the wasp family. And then, any of you have horses out there? Okay, do you ever see this guy buzzing around your horse's legs? I'll bet you did, and you just didn't realize it, because I have them. I don't have horses anymore, but when I did have horses, I board, so I still see them. But they buzz around the horse's legs. The horses don't bother to flick their tails because their buzz has a different volume, different speed, different whatever, than the horse flies. The horses know that they are their friends because those guys eat the horse flies, take them back. They're with open space and sand because they take them back and provision their underground nest where they are going to lay eggs on these dead flies for their larvae to develop. It is a different bug than the last one. You can see it's slightly different. See that the dots are on its abdomen. Or horse guard or a sand wasp, yeah. There are many sand wasps. I mean, do you? Okay, that's my house in the middle of the scrub. And I have very few roaches. I have a few more lately than I used to. And I think it's because there's more neighbors and more human beings to, be attractants. But I have guards that guard my house. I have wolves. No, this is which is which. Okay, this is a Huntsman Spider, I think. I could be wrong about that because he's awfully fuzzy, and Huntsmen aren't that fuzzy. But he's a crab spider. His front two legs often are found together, so he looks like a crab. And he would like to live in my house. Unfortunately, when he comes in my house, they're pretty smart. They stay up in the corner of the room in the daytime, if they are even out in the daytime, because I find really large ones in the house. Unfortunately, if the cats spot them, they're fair game. And then outside, there are these guys occasionally, again, because I have people in my neighborhood. I never saw these. I only had stinking cockroaches. These are called American cockroaches. They are not native. They are non-native roaches. And I don't have as many of these as I did in the past either, but this is a wolf spider. Have you ever gone outside in the dark at night with a headlight, a miner's light on your head? You have to have the light up so the eye shine will bounce back to your eyes. But I used to have, it looked like stars on the ground, little green eyes shining back at me. I still get a few, but not nearly as many as I had in the past. Which is maybe why I'm finding more roaches coming in the house too. When I did outreach for Trout Lake, I went to a festival, and there was a family with children who came, and I had a spider in a bug box, probably a green lynx, and we were talking about spiders, and they said, without my initiating it, that they viewed those spiders as little guards around their house, which I went, oh, that's so wonderful. Okay. This is one of my favorites, and this is one that I don't see nearly as many of. I have had brown annos encroach into the barn area. I used to find a little regal jumping spider on every fence post, and I had one that lived on the fence post in the barn. But they are like, I tell people they're like little kittens. Yes. This one is a male. Or wait, no, this one is a male. This one's a female. And this one is actually gray. She really is that color. She's a female. I think I'd have to look at my Florida's Fabulous. I can't, but they're more than one color. They are adorable, and they look at you. They have excellent eyesight. They can see as well or better than we can, and they look at you. You can see sentience in their eyes, I swear. And they will challenge you. This is a mating ritual, and I have seen them do this. It's like if you have Pasafinos, it's like the Pasafino thing, where they're dancing with their partner. But they'll do that as a threat display as well, and they will do it to us, just like animals will pop their dewlap out and say, "I'm just as tough as you are." Those little lizards will do that, or that little spider will do that threat display also. But I will let them jump from hand to hand. They're not going to bite you. They're just cool. But you got to have some bugs, and you can't be pesticiding everything. When I go out and do garden clubs, you guys, I hope I'm singing to the choir, but when I do garden clubs, I tell them, if you don't have Carolina wrens, you don't have enough bugs in your yard. Because they are, I believe, entirely insectivores, though. I've seen one hopping around my beautyberry. I don't know what he's up to over there, unless there's insects in the beauty. Do they eat some suet? And so maybe he's eating some of those berries too. I haven't caught him in the act yet, but they are very friendly little birds. Oh, and I have one that has a new behavior that I've never seen before. He has started going up in the eaves of my house and searching for spiders in the spider webs that get up there and so hard to clean down. So he is my best friend, and I'm hoping he teaches that behavior to his children or her children. But if you don't have any Carolina wrens, it may be because you don't have enough food for them, because they will nest anywhere. I had an old clothespin bag at Trout Lake that I would take out for outreach. And first of all, I asked the kids what this thing was, and I'd have a clothespin clipped on the outside of the bag for a clue. They did not have a clue what it was, even with that clue. But the other reason I took it is because it still had an old Carolina wren's nest where a Carolina wren had nested in the clothespin bag, maybe hanging on the clothesline, though, because I've had people tell me that would happen, because they build trial nests, so they build more than one, and they are prolific little nest builders.
The tongue hung over the opening, and there'd be 2 or 3 of them in the trees in the nest.
That would be so cool.
Food I didn't have stinky feet.
There you go.
If I leave my front door open, I have wrens coming in.
Oh yeah, yeah. My now ex-husband used to work with the saw in the shop, and he had a Carolina wren. He had a net hanging up in the shop. He had a Carolina wren that would come in and nest it that night, and he'd be working with the lights on and the saw running, and that little Carolina wren did not care. So. Yeah. I had one that nested on that back porch area that I had it was too close to the ground, and I still had that cat that went inside and outside. I was so worried about it. So I took the nest. It was in a cardboard box. I put ropes around the box. I put a hook up in the ceiling, and I moved the box up a few inches every day until I got her up where she was safe. And she accepted that. She fledged 5 babies from that nest. Okay, how about this one? Have you ever seen this little fairy? They're actually pretty common when you start looking for them. At least we had them at Trout Lake. I have them at my house. This is climbing hempweed, this plant right here. It's actually an attractive plant. There's 2 species. There's one that's fragrant and one that's not. It's considered a weed, but if you look at it objectively, it's not ugly, and it is a vine, so it will climb around on things, but it dies back. And it does get messy looking because their caterpillars use it for their larval host plant. And this is the climbing hempweed over here. The reason I have the dog fennel in this picture is they also collect alkaloids from the dog fennel. The males collect alkaloids from the dog fennels, which are passed in their sperm to the females, and it protects the caterpillars from predation. So it's one more reason to tolerate. I tell people that if you look at dog fennel objectively, it really is an attractive plant. You don't have to let it go crazy in your yard. I find it fairly easy to control. Even in the horse pasture, if we keep it mown, the dog fennel stays in check. So it's not, and it's good shelter. I find grasshoppers sheltering in it in heavy wind, and probably other insects too. Oh, right, in the fennel that we, yeah, this is dog fennel. It has a distinctive odor, probably those alkaloids that give it that odor. Yeah, it can be a problem. I mean, I cut it down with a chainsaw in one section of the horse pasture this spring because I had let it get out of control. If we stay on top of mowing it, it's not a problem, but it can spread. But so can lots of other things that we love. I can't think of a good example right now, but right, well, or Chinese tallow, or at least it's native and it has some redeeming value. Right, dotted horse mint. I deadhead my dotted horse mint after it's done blooming because I know if enough seeds have managed to hit the ground that I'm going to have plenty. I make tea with it, which I'm not sure I shouldn't say that because I'm not sure whether that's really a good idea or not, but it hasn't killed me yet. The dotted horse mint? Oh, the dog fennel? Oh, and it does have clear wing panels. I like it. I like the way well, so I have seen it just called a scarlet-bodied wasp, but I love the way it rolls off my tongue when I say clear wing scarlet-bodied wasp moth. It's like a little. Okay, 2-striped walking stick. Have any of you ever made its acquaintance? Have you ever made its acquaintance up close and personal? You have. So you want to tell them what the experience was like? You said you raised your hand that you made it up. So anybody had the? It's not exactly spit. They have 2 little nozzles on the back of their head. Again, when I was at Trout Lake, and my background is early childhood. I have a degree in elementary ed. I'm not a naturalist by education. I'm a naturalist because I've been a naturalist all my life. So I knew some stuff when I started working there. I knew how to do fundraisers. I knew how to plan programs. And I learned a lot while I was the naturalist there. So this little boy who was volunteering, he wasn't little, he was a teenager, comes to me with this walking stick on his hand, and he said, Miss Lavon, what is this? And I said, I don't know. So I'm looking it up and I'm reading, and I get to the point where it says, warn children not to handle this insect. And he starts yelling, my eyes, because they have excellent aim and they can spray a gas, and if you are close enough, that will get in your eyes. I used to get them on my door, and if they would get scared when the door closed. It's like mace. If you've ever had the misfortune if you had a husband who didn't learn the first time he experimented with it, and then he had to try it again, it creates those little particles just float through the air, and that's the same thing. way with these walking sticks spray. It floats through the air, though they can do a direct hit as well. The irony of it is Florida black bears, and I've seen it myself. I'd been told by biologists, and then I found it myself when I was in the forest. Florida black bears in this time of year, their scat in the forest can be full of walking stick exoskeletons, because if you know how most insects, when you step like a roach, if you step on it, it's just like a packet of guts, little tubular things in there, probably actually their breathing apparatus. But at any rate, these guys, when they break, they're like meat on the inside, they're solid. So I can see why they would be a good food source. And the reason I have the little blackberry and the beautyberry is those are two plants that I know of. I'm sure there are probably more that they use because the walking sticks are herbivores. Oh, and the other interesting thing, did you notice the little walking stick back here? When the kids would see it, they thought that was a mommy with her baby. And if the kids were under third grade, I would tell them that was actually the daddy. If they were older than third grade, I would not tell them that, because then they had to tee-hee, ha-ha for the next. And so I just kind of said nothing. But that's a form of mate guarding. That way another male can't add their genetic material, because he's kind of, and yeah. Did you know that animals have two male genitals? Okay, we had that speaker everything you ever wanted to know. Okay, so this is often called a rhinoceros beetle. A rhinoceros beetle is actually kind of greenish and a little bit bigger. This is an ox beetle. They are quite common in horse pastures. They're a dung beetle. They are attracted to the smell of dung. I had a dog, and I had taken it out to walk it and didn't clean up because I live in the country. Came back, and the dung that it had deposited as we went out, there was an ox beetle running across the road to that dung. Recently, my son's job is to clean the litter pan. He was gone, so I cleaned the litter pan and just tossed the plastic bag right outside the door, because I was, had just gotten up. When I went out about an hour later to get that plastic bag, I didn't see the insect that did it, but I'm sure it was an ox beetle, had burrowed through the soil to the plastic bag and was, already beginning to munch on the dung. So, and they provision, if you've ever seen them roll a little ball up in the horse pasture with horse manure, they'll roll a little ball up and roll it to their burrow and provision their burrow for their young by laying eggs on it. And this is, yes, they'll do that too. And this is the larva. And those occasionally get stranded on the surface. I try to help them, but the ants will get them, and I don't really like handling them. They kind of pinch. And then probably we may come to that yet. And this is a 5-line skink. When they're immature, they have that really beautiful blue tail, and when they're really immature, they have red racing stripes along the side. They are the cutest little guys. I tried to keep one alive as a display animal, and I accidentally killed him. And she stays with her eggs like that. I rolled over a log at Trout Lake, and she was under there with I didn't take this particular picture, but this is I'm forgetting to tell you why you're supposed to have certain kinds of habitat. This is an old rotten log. You can't, people worry about termites. I don't have a picture for this story, but a couple years ago, I was sitting in the upstairs of my office area looking out the sliding glass doors, and I noticed that there were tree swallows spiraling in my front yard, and I'm going, what are these birds interested in my front yard? And so I started looking, and then I noticed there was an old tree stump, and the termites were swarming out of that tree stump, and the tree swallows were just scooping them up. And then I noticed my little hummingbird was in the oak tree next to them, and he was hopping around from leaf to leaf because some of the termites were escaping the tree swallows, and he was picking up the termites too. So it was really cool. So termites, I have a wood frame house. I don't think they're interested in my house. I think there's lots of other things they can eat, though. I do try to be appropriately vigilant. Drywood termites, now that's a different story because you usually bring those in yourself because they come. I love old stuff, and I brought in some old furniture that had drywood termites, and I did end up with those in my windowsill because they were trying to get out. And then anyway. Okay, this is another cool critter that I might have living in my shop. I haven't decided what it is, but there's something living in the drop ceiling of the shop, and it has little round ears. Could be a possum. I just barely got a glance. It has a naked tail, but it could be. These are the equivalent of a pack rat for Florida. They bring cute little, shiny objects, and they put them outside of the entrance to their home. I keep hoping one will move in under this old wood pile, and I look under there occasionally. I haven't seen any evidence of any critters living under there, but they have a little latrine. I had some molds for concrete, we poured concrete, and the kids had pressed leaf prints in it. It saved the molds and put them behind the tool area at Trout Lake. And I went out there to get the molds one day and had pulled the tarp off, and there was debris. And then, as I'm taking the molds out and taking the nest apart, there's this little latrine off to the side, or the potty area, because they're very neat and tidy critters, really. It is. Sorry, I forgot to say that part. Florida wood rat. They are quite large. I think it was in Florida's Fabulous. Somewhere I read that in the olden days they were considered good eaten, probably by very hungry people, but maybe not necessarily. I mean, think of the things we eat. Foods are an acquired taste, so. And then the food chain. I don't hate foxes. I don't hate bobcats. I don't hate snakes. They're all part of the cycle of life, and I try to protect myself and allow them to carry out their lives. I have a neighbor who has chickens, and she said if the possum came back again, it was going to meet his end. And I said, well, don't you eat chicken? Because you're actually baiting for animals to come in, and it's not fair even to relocate them, because if you relocate them, we built Chicken Fort Knox when we had chickens. It was fenced all the way around. Fence went down into the ground. We protected our chickens. But animals smell food, they are going to come, and you may remove one, another one will move into that territory, and they will come. And the one you moved out didn't find a nice welcome where you took him. He was in another animal's territory. He may get into fights, and they try to come back home. So they're crossing roads. It's not necessarily the most kind and benevolent thing to do to move them somewhere else. And you could be spreading disease, or God only knows what. So gray foxes, we have cute little gray foxes. They're not much bigger than house cats, and will eat grasshoppers. They're omnivores. They'll eat pretty much anything that's not nailed down. When I lost my cat, was probably to a coyote, but I didn't feel quite so bad about it, because coyotes, if you've ever watched nature programs on TV, predators don't want to have to fight with their prey, so they try to snap their neck. This is maybe too graphic for some of you, but the animal dies quickly, and it probably fed little baby coyote pups. So that was, for me, that was consolation that my cat had met her end. And then balancing the population. Unlike, I have a discussion with people about leaving your cat go outside, and they say it's just part of nature's plan. They're just another predator. And I tell them, no, we give cats an unfair advantage. I had a neighbor who had barn cats, and she got a new significant other, and he would put the kittens in a cage until they got big enough to fend for themselves, because at first her population remained stable. She only had about half a dozen cats. He started protecting them, and they were up to 30 cats. That is not a healthy thing to have in an ecosystem. So leave some space in your landscape for fairies, trolls, and dragons, and encourage your neighbors to do the same. Most of you, some of you, many of you probably live in an area that still has open space around you. In Lake County, I have become involved in advocacy. I was at a meeting before I came here today. That's why I'm a little bit more dressed up than I might be otherwise. And it is a battle trying to encourage the commissioners to balance what they see as economic health with environmental natural functions, because in Lake County, we have a lot of lakes, and our lakes are better than they were for a little while, but they are still green cesspools, and we have hydrilla. It's just, and in large part, it's because they're over fertilized, from homes, from septic tanks. So hopefully you guys can get a grip on this before it destroys your natural beauty and help, because there are ways to build that you can build cluster cute little communities in the middle that have higher density, and then moving out to more open, larger lots, and then some open space, and maybe even conservation easements on some of those big ranches when it's no longer economically feasible for them to run that ranch, so that they can ranch and have the benefit of the conservation easement, and perhaps some transfer of development rights from those new urban areas. So maybe you guys can help to protect Citrus County before it looks like Orange County, which Orange County has rights of nature. They passed an amendment, or I guess it's part of their comprehensive plan. I don't know exactly what it is, but there's a rights of nature for Orange County, which is kind of ironic because there's very little nature left in Orange County except on the eastern side. Anyway, I think I'm done. Let me see. Yeah, so I put this up here again so you'll remember. Cleanliness isn't next to godliness, but you can't be as messy as I am. I can get away with it because I'm on my 5 acres and nobody can really see what I'm doing. But you have to have, a landscape that people will say, I'd like to do this in my yard, rather than, ooh, yuck, I'd never do that in my yard, which is what mine's like. Actually, it's a little better. So, and my friends and other nature lovers gave me photos. I did maybe steal a few. And the landscape that the Skillings landscape was done by Amanda Martin. So, and that's it. I got to tell you, it's so much more fun to do this in front of a live audience. I did this as a Zoom program about a month ago, and it was no fun. Have any questions? Anybody want to add your stories if we have time? Would, and that's true of it is. Yep. Have the what? Yes, the emerald ash borer. And right. Right. Yep. So there's a lot to being a naturalist. There's a lot to taking care of the planet. It's not as simple as people think it is. But what I tell our county commissioners is it's far less expensive to have functioning natural areas that can filter the water, recharge the water, provide habitat for pollinators, and be ecotourism sites, than it is to, like, our NERF, which cost $9 billion to build. It's a water treatment facility retreating the water coming out of Lake Apopka. I call it putting on our lakes on dialysis. It's easier to take care of your body than it is to, suffer through. And, I
All right, well, if nobody has any more questions, then I want to thank everyone for coming. And, oh, Donna, what would you? We have one frostweed left on the table, so if anybody would like to take home a frostweed, please help yourself. We thank you for coming, and if any of our new members want to talk to us afterwards, feel free to come up and we'll be glad to talk to you. So thank you, everyone. Have a good night.